Monica raised her plastic cup like a champagne flute, pinky out, and smiled at 30 people on folding chairs in a scout lodge. That man can't even feed himself without me. Laughter scattered across the room. My son Caleb stared at his lap. I watched condensation slide down her cup and drip onto the folding table. 3 weeks later, I asked her for coffee, gave her an address near Mountain Home. She doesn't know about the lake. Please subscribe and leave a comment. What time is it right now where you are? I read every single one. My name is Grady Holcomb. I'm 43 years old, and I've spent 22 years making sure other people's numbers add up. I met Monica at a barbecue when I was 25. My buddy Jason Kemp, who worked framing crews for a builder out of Fayetteville, had invited me because he said I needed to stop eating alone on weekends. Monica was standing by the cooler in a yellow sundress, laughing at something someone said, pulling everyone within 10 feet into her orbit. She talked to you like the rest of the yard had emptied out. It hadn't, but I bought it long enough to propose 4 months later. We married that fall. Small ceremony, her family's church in Bentonville. I wore my father's Hamilton field watch because I didn't own a suit watch and didn't see the point of buying one. For 12 years, I was the engine nobody heard running. I paid the mortgage on the 4-bedroom colonial on Ridgewood Lane, a cul-de-sac neighborhood where the lawn stayed green because the HOA fined you if they didn't. I coached my son Caleb's Little League team for 3 seasons, drove the equipment trailer to away games, kept the pitch count in a pocket notebook. I built the backyard deck by hand over 3 weekends using pressure-treated lumber I'd sourced at contractor rates through work. 16 footings, 48 joists, 212 deck boards. I counted because that's what I do. I count things. At Burden and Lacey Construction on the industrial side of Rogers, I sit at a corner desk with 3 monitors running cost projection spreadsheets. No photos on the desk, no personal items, except a coffee mug from a campout with Caleb's troop. I've worked there 22 years as a senior cost analyst, earning $78,000 annually. I have signing authority on vendor accounts up to $50,000. A trust-level Phil Lacey, the co-owner, a 60-year-old contractor who'd started the firm pouring foundations himself, gives to no one below partner. He told me once, standing in the doorway of my office with a rolled-up set of blueprints under his arm, "Holcomb, you've saved this firm more money than any job we ever bid." I nodded and went back to my spreadsheet. That's the appropriate response when someone states a fact. What nobody at work knew, what Monica never cared to learn, was that I applied the same discipline to cooking. I keep a leather-bound moleskine notebook of every recipe I've built from scratch. Not collected. Built. Each entry reads like an engineering specification, temperatures to the degree, timing to the second, margin notes on adjustments measured to the quarter teaspoon. I spent 3 consecutive weekends perfecting a single roux, dark as coffee, smooth enough to coat the back of a spoon without a single grain showing. The notebook has 73 completed entries. Monica never opened it. To her, I was just messing around in the kitchen. The divorce came 4 years ago. No affair, no blowout fight, no single breaking point. Monica said she'd outgrown the marriage. Her attorney said the same thing in more expensive language. The settlement gave her the house. Half my 401k. Primary custody of Caleb, with every other weekend visitation for me. 3 years of spousal support at $1,400 per month. I agreed to all of it. My attorney, a guy named Steve Rowan out of Springdale who handled contracts for Burden and Lacey, told me I could fight for better terms. I told him a custody battle would run 40,000 minimum, damage Caleb, and change nothing about the outcome. I signed the papers, packed what mattered into the bed of my truck, and drove to Sycamore Ridge Apartments in Rogers. Unit 2B, second floor, 1990s, brick construction, beige carpet, popcorn ceiling. I set up a leather recliner in the living room, a twin bed in the second bedroom for Caleb's visits, and hung my 12-inch Lodge cast iron skillet from a hook above the stove. 15 years of seasoning on that pan, black as engine oil and smooth as glass. It was the one thing from the kitchen I took. Monica kept the colonial and started redecorating before the ink dried. New paint, new furniture, new photos on the mantle. I heard about it from Caleb, who mentioned it the way a kid mentions weather. Mom got new couch cushion. That first night in the apartment, I sat at the small dining table with my laptop open and the cast iron skillet cooling on the stove behind me. I'd made a simple steak. Ribeye, seared at 450, rested 8 minutes. Good knife, clean cut, pink center. I ate it standing at the counter because the table only had one chair. Through the thin walls, I could hear someone's television, the low hum of a refrigerator filling the empty rooms. Then I opened Excel and created a new tab. I didn't name it Plan. I named it Forward. The first column listed my monthly take-home after taxes and spousal support. The second column broke that number into fixed costs: rent, utilities, insurance, food. The third column showed what remained. I stared at the third column for a long time. Then I set up automatic transfers. 60% of every surplus dollar into a 3-fund portfolio: total stock market, total international, total bond. Quarterly rebalancing. Automated contributions to remove emotion from the process. The same analytical discipline I used to forecast whether a school project would run over budget by 6% or 7%, I now applied to a different kind of construction. I closed the laptop at midnight, washed the skillet, dried it, rubbed it with a thin coat of flaxseed oil, and hung it back on the hook. The skillet hung on its hook. The spreadsheet saved to the desktop. It wasn't defeat. It was a clean ledger. The smoke alarm story started at book club on a Tuesday night in September, 4 weeks after I moved into the apartment. Monica told it the way she told everything, as performance. Caleb had called her at 10 p.m. because the smoke alarm went off while I was cooking. That part was true. I'd seared a pork chop at high heat and the ventilation in Unit 2B was a 4-inch fan that couldn't clear steam from a tea kettle. What wasn't true was that I'd been trying to boil pasta and couldn't manage it. That I'd panicked. That Caleb had to talk me through turning on the stove. None of that happened. But Monica told it to 8 women drinking Pinot Grigio on Karen Metcalf's sectional couch, and by the time she finished, it was the funniest thing anyone had heard all week. By Thursday, the story had reached the school pickup line. I know because Caleb mentioned it at dinner that weekend, the way he mentioned everything, sideways and without eye contact. Mom told some people you set the apartment on fire. I cut my steak. The smoke alarm went off. That's what smoke alarms do. He nodded and didn't bring it up again. By Sunday, the story had settled into the fellowship hall at Grace Community Church, where it mixed with the coffee and the sheet cake crumbs and became something permanent. Monica's friend Tara Kinney, a divorced woman from her Pilates class who traded in other women's grievances like a second income, carried it from table to table. I heard about this secondhand from a guy named Pete in estimating whose wife attended Grace Community. He told me in the break room with the careful tone people use when they're delivering bad news they find a little funny. Hey, Holcomb. My wife said your ex told everybody at church you can't boil water. I poured my coffee. That right. Yeah, he paused. You okay? I'm fine. I was fine. The numbers on the spreadsheet were fine. The automatic transfers were hitting the Vanguard account on the 1st and 15th of every month without a single missed deposit. Green columns. No red. The stories kept coming. Not in a flood. In a drip. At a Troop 11 Ford fundraiser that October, Monica told 3 mothers I'd bounced a check at the grocery store. I heard about it 2 days later from one of those mothers, a woman named Beth Archer whose husband had framed houses with Jason Kemp. She told me at a gas station, standing between our trucks with the pump running and the smell of gasoline hanging between us. I don't think she meant anything by it, Beth said. I've never bounced a check in my life, I said. Beth looked at the ground. I figured she didn't correct the record. Nobody ever did. At Caleb's 16th birthday party, which Monica hosted at the Bentonville Colonial she'd redecorated from the baseboards up, she waited until I was standing in the kitchen doorway holding a plate of cake before she turned to the room. Bless his heart. Have you seen his apartment? It looks like a college dorm. Guests laughed, the uncomfortable kind where people aren't sure if they're supposed to. I set the plate down on the counter I'd installed myself 6 years earlier, and walked outside to the deck I'd built. 16 footings, 48 joists, 212 deck boards. I stood there until the party ended. I noticed the photos on the mantle that day. The wedding picture was gone. The family portrait from Caleb's 8th birthday had been cropped and reprinted. I was cut from the frame. In the new version, it was just Monica and Caleb in front of the Christmas tree, smiling like the photograph had always looked that way. Over the next 2 years, the mutual friends who remembered things differently, who'd watched me build that deck, who'd seen me at every Little League game keeping pitch counts in a pocket notebook, stopped appearing at Monica's dinner parties and book clubs and Sunday brunches. I don't know if she cut them out or if they drifted. The effect was the same. The people who could contradict her story were no longer in the room when she told it. Tara Kinney remained. Tara, who had never been to my apartment, never watched me cook, never once asked me for my version of anything, became the chief witness to a marriage she'd observed from the outside through Monica's lens. She confirmed every claim with the certainty of someone who had been there. She hadn't. I heard all of it. Every story, every exaggeration, every lie. A story told at Pilates on Monday reached the church parking lot by Wednesday. People repeated Monica's version to me with the same casual certainty they'd used to report the weather. I never corrected the record, not once. Not because I didn't care, but because correcting one story wouldn't fix the system that produced it. Arguing with compound interest doesn't change the rate. So I did what I do. I watched the numbers. The forward spreadsheet crossed the first major threshold 18 months after the divorce. Green columns. Quarterly rebalancing. The numbers didn't need my attention to grow. I opened a browser and searched for real estate attorneys in Mountain Home, Arkansas. 90 minutes south of Bentonville. Different county, different world. I found a man named Dale Jessup with a small office near the courthouse square. I called him from my apartment on a Tuesday night while Monica was across town telling another story about me to another room full of people. I'm looking for lakefront property in Baxter County, I told him. Cash purchase. No financing. No co-signers. What's your timeline? Jessup asked. When the numbers are right. The spousal support ended 12 months ago. That freed $1,400 a month, which I redirected into the same three-fund portfolio without changing my lifestyle by a single dollar. Monica never noticed. She never understood what a cost analyst earns, what a cost analyst saves, or what happens when a man who reads expense ratios the way other people read box scores has 4 years of compounding silence on his side. The green columns grew. The stories kept spreading. 2 systems running on parallel tracks. One loud, one quiet. The spreadsheet didn't need an audience. 4 years after the divorce, on the last Saturday in May, honeysuckle drifted through the propped open doors of Ridgeline Community Lodge and mixed with the chemical sweetness of fruit punch from the kitchenette. Late sun cut through the west-facing windows and laid gold bars across the fieldstone walls where framed photos of every Eagle Scout since 1987 hung in 2 neat rows. 30 folding chairs faced the small stage. American flag on the left, Troop 11-4 banner on the right. Caleb stood at the front in his full uniform, merit badge sash crossing his chest. 17 years old, shoulders squared, hands at his sides. He'd earned every patch on that sash. I'd watched him earn them. 4 years of campouts and service projects, and 5 a.m. drives to conservation sites where he'd hauled brush until his palms blistered. Every weekend, every cold morning, every Dutch oven dinner I cooked over a campfire while other fathers sat in their trucks. Scoutmaster Ray Delgado, a retired postal worker in his early 60s who'd led Troop 11-4 for 9 years, stood beside Caleb and conducted the ceremony with the precision the rank demanded. Ray had watched me show up to every event for 4 years. He'd seen me drive the supply trailer through ice storms and sleep on the ground without complaint and volunteer for dish duty when nobody else would. He never said much about it. He didn't need to. The formal ceremony lasted 40 minutes. Pledge of allegiance, presentation of the rank, reading of the Scout Law. Caleb's voice was steady when he recited the oath. I sat in the second row with my hands on my knees, button-down sleeves rolled to the forearm, my father's Hamilton ticking against my wrist. The metal chair pressed into my back. I didn't shift. After Ray finished, the applause came from all 30 chairs at once. Sheet cake, punch, handshakes. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Monica's older sister, Denise Fullerton, a well-meaning woman who'd spent her life stepping around conflict, stood up near the kitchenette. Before we cut the cake, does anyone want to say a few words? She was looking at the Scoutmasters, the troop committee chair, maybe a parent or two. She wasn't looking at Monica, but Monica was already standing. Wait, everyone. Monica's voice carried the way it always did, filling the room from the edges inward. Hold on. I want to say something about Grady. She paused. Let the room turn. No, it's sweet. She raised her plastic cup of lemonade and ginger ale punch. Pinky extended. The cup tilted at the angle of a champagne flute at a fundraiser gala, not a scout lodge with folding chairs and fluorescent lights. Her smile was wide, the smile she used when she wanted the room to hold still before she spoke. That man can't even feed himself without me. She laughed. The laugh came first, the way it always did, signaling permission. Some guests followed. Nervous laughter, scattered, dying at different speeds like an engine losing cylinders. Tara Kinney, 2 rows back, leaned toward the woman beside her. She's not wrong, though. I heard it. She didn't whisper as quietly as she thought. Ray Delgado set his punch glass on the kitchenette counter. He didn't say anything. He just looked away, jaw tight, the way a man looks away when he sees something wrong and can't fix it without making it worse. Caleb stared at his lap. His hands, which had been open and relaxed during the ceremony, closed into fists against his thighs. This was his night, his achievement, 4 years of work reduced to the setup for his mother's joke. I sat in my folding chair, hands flat on my knees. I watched a single bead of condensation track down the side of Monica's plastic cup, gather weight at the rim, and drop onto the folding table. The spot darkened the paper tablecloth in a circle the size of a dime. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My son was watching, and he didn't need to see me become the man she said I was. Ray caught my eye as the room shifted back to cake and small talk. He gave me a single nod, brief, the kind of acknowledgement that passes between two men who have nothing to prove and no interest in performing. I left at 8:15, put my hand on Caleb's shoulder at the door, told him I was proud of him, and drove back to Unit 2B. The apartment was dark except for the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. Through the thin walls, the neighbor's television murmured, and the refrigerator filled the silence with its low hum. I didn't turn on the overhead. I sat at the dining table and opened my laptop, and the screen threw blue light across the popcorn ceiling. I opened the forward spreadsheet. The columns were green, 4 years of green. 3 months ago, a cashier's check from First Security Bank in Mountain Home had cleared for $287,000. Dale Jessup, the real estate attorney I'd found in Baxter County, had filed the deed with the county recorder's office on a Tuesday afternoon while Monica was across town telling someone I couldn't manage a checking account. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen, opened the top drawer next to the stove. The deed sat on top of a stack of closing documents. 1 page. Baxter County Recorder. Grady Allen Holcomb, sole owner. 2 acres of lakefront. No mortgage. No lien. No cosigner. I looked at it for a long time. Then I slid the drawer closed, wound my father's watch, and went to bed. It was time. 3 weeks passed. I spent them the way I spend everything, working the problem. The lakehouse had been mine since March, but I'd only been out on weekends, unloading what I could fit in the truck bed each trip. Tools first, then materials. The kitchen came last because the kitchen mattered most. I put in my vacation request Friday afternoon. First days I'd used in 2 years. Phil Lacey didn't ask why. He just said, "About time, Holcomb," and went back to his blueprints. Monday morning, I drove to Mountain Home and didn't come back to the apartment until Friday. The copper pans arrived in a set of 7 from a restaurant supply company in Springfield. Not decorative copper. Working copper, tin-lined, hand-hammered, weight you could feel through the handle. I mounted the ceiling rack above the granite island myself, measured the spacing between hooks at 4-inch intervals, hung each pan by weight. Heaviest on the outside, lightest in the center. Balance matters in a kitchen the same way it matters in a budget. The cast iron skillet went on the magnetic knife strip beside the range. Not the new one I'd bought for the house. The old one, the 12-inch Lodge from Unit 2B, 15 years of seasoning, burned into the metal. I'd carried it in a towel on the passenger seat like it was something alive. It hung there now against the tile backsplash, black and smooth, the only thing in the kitchen that had been in all 3 places. I positioned the recipe notebook on the open shelf next to salt, fat, acid, heat, and a dog-eared copy of the food lab. 73 entries in my handwriting, each one a solved equation. I ran my thumb across the leather cover, then opened to the next blank page and uncapped a pen. First meal in the finished kitchen. Seared ribeye, 450 degrees, 90 seconds per side, rested 12 minutes. I wrote it in the same hand I'd used for the first entry 8 years ago. Same moleskine, same discipline, different kitchen. The pen paused over the page. In Unit 2B, I'd eaten that first steak standing at the counter because I only had one chair. Here, the island had space for 4. I'd bought 2 stools. Room for Caleb, room for whoever came next. I set the notebook back on the shelf and walked the house. The professional-grade range and hood anchored the kitchen's south wall, stainless steel catching the morning light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The farmhouse sink sat under the window that faced the dock, and through the glass I could see 2 herons standing in the shallows, standing like they had nowhere else to be. The stone fireplace filled the great room's north wall, river rock stacked to the cedar beam ceiling. Reclaimed barnwood ran across the wraparound deck outside, planks I'd sanded and sealed myself over 3 weekends. Grease stains on the range hood, watermarks on the deck railing where a coffee mug sat through a rain shower, a worn spot on the floorboard in front of the sink where I'd stood washing dishes while watching the lake turn copper at sunset. A place someone lived. The property deed sat in the top drawer of the kitchen island. I'd left it there after reviewing property tax documents the week before. 1 page. Baxter County Recorder. My name. No mortgage. No lien. No co-signer. I didn't move it. Not up, not down, not anywhere. It belonged in the drawer the way the skillet belonged on the wall. Present, not performed. On Wednesday of the 3rd week, I sent the text. Would you be open to meeting for coffee to discuss Caleb's college planning? There's a nice spot near Mountain Home by the water. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then, sure, Saturday works. What time? 10 o'clock, I wrote. I'll send the address that morning. I set the phone on the island and poured coffee, drank it standing at the farmhouse sink, watching a heron lift from the dock and cross the cove in a single sweep. The water was flat and green, no wind, just the sound of it lapping against the shoreline and the tick of my father's watch on my wrist. I knew what Monica would do with the invitation, the same thing she did with everything, narrate it. I was right. Caleb mentioned it that Friday during our phone call, the way he mentioned everything. Sideways. Mom said she's meeting you for coffee this weekend. That's the plan, she told Tara. She's being the bigger person. I rinsed my mug. That's nice of her. Caleb paused. Dad, what's going on? College planning, I said. We should start looking at numbers. He didn't push. He was learning when to leave things alone. I wasn't sure that was a good thing. Saturday morning broke clear over the lake. I was up at 6, the way I'm always up at 6, and I ground beans and brewed a pot and carried my mug to the deck. The water held the sky like a sheet of glass. 2 bass boats idled near the far shore. A kingfisher worked the dock pilings, diving and surfacing, running the same pattern until it hit. At 9:15, I texted Monica the address. No context, no description, just the numbers and the road name. At 9:42, her silver Lexus appeared at the top of the gravel drive. The driveway winds 200 yards through hardwoods, oak and hickory, canopy thick enough that the light comes through in patches. You can't see the house from the road. You can't see it from 50 yards in. You have to commit to the drive, follow the gravel through 3 curves before the trees open and the cedar and stone structure appears against the water. Monica's car slowed at the 2nd curve. I could see it from the deck, brake lights flaring red through the tree trunks. At the 3rd curve, the canopy broke and the house filled her windshield. Floor-to-ceiling windows, stone fireplace visible through the glass, the wraparound deck, the lake behind it, catching the morning sun in a line of white light that ran from the dock to the horizon. Her car stopped. The engine idled. Gravel pinged against the undercarriage. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she pulled forward and parked beside my truck. I stood on the deck with 2 mugs of coffee. Sleeves rolled to the forearm. My father's Hamilton ticking steady on my wrist. The herons were back on the dock, standing in the shallows, and the water moved against the shore the way it had before either of us existed and would after we were gone. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The kitchen was behind me. The deed was in the drawer. The skillet hung on the wall. Monica stepped out of the Lexus with her smile already set. The wide one. The one she used when she walked into a room she intended to own. She left her sunglasses on top of her head and scanned the property the way I'd scan a bid sheet. Top to bottom, line by line, running numbers. The cedar siding, the stone foundation, the deck wrapping around 3 sides. The lake behind it all, flat and bright under a 10 o'clock sun. Well, she smoothed her blouse. This is nice. Whose place is this? I handed her a mug. Coffee, black, the way she'd taken it for 12 years before switching to oat milk lattes after the divorce. Mine. Her smile tightened. Not gone. Adjusted, the way a number changes when you revise an assumption in a spreadsheet and the whole column shifts. Renting? I didn't answer. I opened the front door and stepped aside. She walked in because not walking in would have been an admission. Monica never admitted anything she hadn't rehearsed. The great room opened around her. Stone fireplace on the north wall. River rock running floor to ceiling. Cedar beams overhead. Floor-to-ceiling windows on the south side throwing a sheet of lake light across the hardwood. The room smelled like coffee and warm stone, and the faint cedar tang of beams that had been holding heat since dawn. Monica's head turned left, then right. Her fingers found the back of the leather armchair near the fireplace and traced the stitching. She didn't sit. She moved toward the kitchen the way she moved through everyone's kitchen, hands first. The granite island caught her attention before anything else. She ran her palm across it, felt the weight of the stone, the cold of it, the polish. Her eyes tracked upward to the copper pans hanging from the ceiling rack. 7 of them, arranged by weight, tin-lined, catching the window light in dull orange. She opened the first cabinet. Spices. 43 jars arranged alphabetically, Aleppo pepper to za'atar, each label facing forward. She closed it. The latch clicked in the quiet kitchen. Opened the next. Mixing bowls nested by size. Stainless steel, copper-bottomed. She closed it. Opened the drawer below the range. Cast iron Dutch oven. Enameled in deep blue, heavy enough that the drawer runners groaned. I leaned against the island and drank my coffee. My father's Hamilton ticked against my wrist. In the silence between cabinet doors, I could hear it. She found the range next. Professional grade, 6 burners, stainless steel hood vented to the outside. She turned one of the knobs a 1/4 inch, felt it click, turned it back. She opened the oven door, looked inside, closed it. Her fingers left prints on the stainless steel. She didn't wipe them. The farmhouse sink stopped her. Not the sink itself, but the view through the window above it. The dock, the water, 2 herons standing in the shallows with their necks curved like parentheses. The kind of view you plan a kitchen around. She turned away from it. The view didn't fit. The recipe notebook sat on the open shelf between 2 cookbooks. She pulled it down and opened it to the middle. I watched her eyes move across the page. Temperature notations, timing marks, margin notes in my handwriting, the same handwriting she'd seen on 12 years of grocery lists and permission slips. Reduce butter by 1/8 for crispier edges. Rest 12 minutes minimum, 14 preferred. She turned 3 more pages. 4, 5, 6, 7. Each one filled. Each one dated. The earliest entry was 8 years old. She closed the notebook and set it back on the shelf with both hands. Then she opened the kitchen island drawer. Her right hand went in first, the way it always did, fingers spread, searching for whatever the drawer contained, the way she searched every drawer in every house she entered. Her fingers found the edge of the document before her eyes did. Baxter County Recorder, 1 page. Grady Holcomb, sole owner. 2 acres, no mortgage. No lien, no cosigner. The ink was 3 months dry. The county seal pressed into the paper left a ridge she could feel under her thumb. Her hands stopped moving. This doesn't. She set the deed down on the granite, picked it up again. No. How long have you had this? I drank my coffee. Who helped you with this? Her voice climbed half a register. Because this isn't. You didn't do this yourself, Grady. She looked at me, looked at the range, looked at the copper pans, looked at the notebook on the shelf. You didn't. I set my mug on the granite. The sound was small and specific, ceramic on stone, and in the quiet of the kitchen, it carried the way a period carries at the end of a sentence. I did the math, Monica. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. When did you? How much did? Who told you to? Her sentences came apart like a budget with bad assumptions. She wasn't asking questions. She was running calculations that wouldn't balance. This is. You were in that apartment. You were eating alone. I had a skillet. I had a spreadsheet. I had 4 years. The kitchen said it. The copper pans said it. The 73 recipes said it. The deed on the granite said it in county ink and an embossed seal. Monica looked at the cast-iron skillet hanging on the magnetic strip beside the range. The same skillet. 15 years of seasoning. The one thing I'd taken from the house she got in the settlement. The pan she'd told 30 people I couldn't use. Her jaw worked. Her eyes moved to the skillet, to the island, to the deed, to the window where the herons stood in the shallows, unbothered, standing the way they'd stood before she arrived and would stand after she left. She had nothing to accuse. The evidence was granite and cedar and 2 acres of lakefront, paid in full, owned by the man who couldn't feed himself. I picked up my mug and drank my coffee, slid the deed back into the drawer and closed it. Through the farmhouse sink window, the lake was flat and green. Same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. Monica didn't call that night, didn't text. Caleb mentioned later she hadn't posted anything on social media either. For the first time in 4 years, silence came from her side of the equation. I knew what silence meant from Monica. It meant she was calculating, running scenarios the way I run cost projections. But this time, the numbers wouldn't balance. If she told people about the lakehouse, she admitted, I was competent. If she stayed quiet, she risked someone else breaking the news on her turf, in her circles, where she couldn't shape the delivery. I didn't dwell on it. The calculation was hers now, not mine. I had a kitchen to use. That first week after her visit, I cooked every night. Braised short ribs on Tuesday, low and slow for 4 hours until the meat fell off the bone at the touch of a fork. Pan-seared trout on Wednesday, caught that morning from the dock, skin crackling under the knife, flesh white and clean. Thursday, I made stock from the rib bones, skimmed it 3 times, let it reduce to a concentrate I poured into ice cube trays and froze. The notebook filled. New section at the top of the page, Lake Norfolk, summer. Caleb came down the following weekend. He arrived Friday evening in the used Honda Civic I'd helped him buy with money from his summer job at the hardware store. He stood on the deck for a long time, hands in his pockets, looking at the water the way you look at something you didn't know existed. "This is yours?" he said. "It is." "Since when?" "Approach." He walked inside. I watched him take it in the same way Monica had, but different. Monica had searched for fraud. Caleb opened the spice cabinet, ran his hand along the recipe notebook's spine, stood in front of the cast-iron skillet for a long time without saying anything. Saturday morning, I made shakshuka. Eggs poached in a spiced tomato sauce, fresh cilantro from the herb box on the deck railing, crusty bread torn by hand. Caleb ate 2 servings. Then he pulled out his phone and took a photo of the plate. He posted it to Instagram that afternoon. I didn't see it until Sunday morning when my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone I didn't know had liked a photo I was tagged in. I opened the app. The photo showed the plate, the dock visible through the window behind it, the lake flat and silver in the morning light. His caption was 2 words. Dad's place. Caleb had tagged the location as Lake Norfolk. The post had 47 likes and 9 comments. Tara Kinney saw it first. I know because Caleb told me, the same sideways delivery he used for everything. "Tara texted Mom," he said Sunday morning, packing his bag. "Asked if you had a house. What did your mom say?" "Nothing. She just put her phone down and went to the she shed." I poured his coffee, didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. The cascade moved at the same speed it always had. Tuesday, book club. Thursday, school pickup. Sunday, church fellowship. The same route, the same nodes, the same women passing information between them like currency. But the denomination had changed. Beth Archer, the woman who'd told me at the gas station that Monica's bounced check story probably didn't mean anything, was the first one to recalculate out loud. I heard about it from Pete in estimating, who heard it from his wife. Beth told my wife she always thought the stories about you didn't add up, Pete said in the break room. Said she remembered you cooking for the whole troop at the winter campout in 22. 40 people. Nobody complained. I poured my coffee. That's nice of her. She's not the only one saying it. The troop mothers had spent 4 years watching me haul gear and cook Dutch oven dinners and sleep on the ground without complaint. They'd heard Monica's stories and said nothing, because contradicting a divorced mother in a community this small carried a cost nobody wanted to pay. But the Instagram photo changed the math. The cost of silence was now higher than the cost of speaking. Ray Delgado said it best. I didn't hear it directly. It came through the same network that had carried Monica's version for 4 years, passed from Ray to another scout parent named Jim Whitfield, from Jim to Pete, from Pete to me in the break room on a Wednesday. That man never missed a single event in 4 years, Ray had said. Nothing else, just the fact. The way you state a fact when the fact is enough. Monica tried to rearrange. I heard about that too. At book club the following Tuesday, when the questions came, she had a new line ready. Karen Metcalf, the one whose sectional couch had hosted the original smoke alarm story 4 years ago, asked about the lakehouse. Monica laughed. The laugh came first, the way it always did, but this time nobody followed. Oh, I always said he had potential. Karen looked at her. Tara looked at the floor. Nobody spoke. The same women who'd laughed at the smoke alarm story 4 years ago sat with their wine glasses and said nothing. Pete's wife mentioned to Pete that the Colonial on Ridgewood suddenly looked different to people. The mortgage that came with it was Monica's alone now. The she-shed in the backyard, the new furniture, the redecorated living room with the cropped photos on the mantel. All of it still there. But what had looked like independence now looked like overhead. What had looked like thriving now looked like spending. I didn't call anyone, didn't post anything, didn't correct the record. The record corrected itself. 4 years of quiet on one side and a single photograph on the other. Caleb came back the next weekend, and the weekend after that. He brought a notebook of his own, a spiral-bound composition book from the drugstore, and sat at the kitchen island while I cooked. "Dad," he said on a Saturday evening, a pork chop searing in the lodge skillet behind me. "What's an index fund?" I turned the burner down, wiped my hands on the towel, pulled up a stool across from him, opened the spreadsheet on my laptop, the one labeled Home. "Let me show you," I said. Before I continue, please like and give my revenge a score from 1 to 10. I want to hear your thoughts. 6 months later, the cast iron skillet cooled on the granite island and the lake turned copper through the kitchen window. I sat on the wraparound deck with my boots on the railing and a mug of coffee going cold in my hand. The air smelled like grilled peppers and the cedar planks warming under the last of the sun. Inside, the dishes from dinner were stacked in the farmhouse sink. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 sets of silverware. Caleb sat at the end of the dock with his feet in the water and a paperback open against his knees. 17, almost 18 now, shoulders broader than they'd been in May. He came most weekends. Drove the Honda down Friday after school, left Sunday evening. Nobody made him. Nobody asked. He just showed up the way people show up to places that feel like theirs. The recipe notebook lay open on the island inside, turned to the Lake Norfolk summer section. I'd started it in June, 14 entries now, and one of them wasn't in my handwriting. Caleb's print was larger than mine, the letters uneven, the measurements rounded to the nearest tablespoon instead of the quarter teaspoon. His shakshuka entry had a margin note. Dad says, "Rest the eggs longer." I left it uncorrected. He'd figure out the timing on his own. That's how it works. The spreadsheet on my laptop was labeled Home now. Had been since August, a Tuesday night after Caleb had gone to bed in the second bedroom. Same columns, same green, same discipline, different word. I didn't need Monica to fail. I needed Caleb to see what quiet looked like when it finished building. I wound my father's watch. The crown turned 3 times under my thumb, the spring tightened, and the second hand caught its rhythm. 4 seconds a day, its only margin of error, every day. Down on the dock, Caleb turned a page. The water lapped against the pilings. A heron stood in the shallows near the far bank, holding the same spot since dusk. I drank my coffee and watched the light go. Quiet doesn't mean empty. It means the numbers already balanced.